Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Paulo Correia. I am a faculty member at the School of Arts, Sciences, and Humanities of the University of São Paulo, and a board member of the USP Teaching Development Center. It's a pleasure to welcome you to today's sessions entitled Faculty Development Selected Approaches, which brings together three distinguished colleagues: Dr. Gina Hurley from Yale University, Professor Shigeru Miagawa from MIT Seikei University, and Professor Manoel Rodrigues Alves from the University of São Paulo. We are delighted to have all of you with us for what promises to be a rich conversation about different perspectives and experiences in faculty development. Before introducing our speakers in more detail, I would like to invite my colleague and co-host, Professor Carlos Navas, to briefly introduce the Vivenciando debate series and today's sessions within its broader context. Carlos, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
Okay.
Since 2020, the University of São Paulo has hosted a debate cycle that is called Vivenciando, which might be translated as Engaged Experience. It was originally conceived by a commission on pedagogical development that was created by the Office of the Provost for Graduate Studies in the context of the pandemic. Over the years, Vivenciando has addressed key issues in academic life, including the university as an institution, its historical and contemporary roles, faculty development, teaching, learning, graduate education, and meta-sciences. The debate later expanded to include pedagogical practices, scientific publishing, faculty careers, academic evaluation, and the relationships between science and society. More recently, in 24 and 25, the focus shifted to knowledge production, decolonial perspectives, and the role of universities in the Global South. In 2026, Vivenciando became part of the newly founded Faculty Development Center with a first semester series entitled Knowledge Production and Academic Training, a Contemporary Utopia. This series brings together discussions on open science, post-normal science, early career researchers and faculty, academic training, empowerment, and faculty development. Taken together, these debates examine how researchers and faculty are formed within contemporary academic universities. They also ask how transferable competencies can be developed beyond the research environment, especially in transdisciplinary contexts, with attention to the challenges faced by early career academics. And it is within this framework that today we host the final debate of this series, which is Faculty Development Selected Approaches. And now we will introduce our speakers for today. And Paulo, please, the word is with you.
Okay, thank you, Carlos. Before we begin, let me briefly explain the format of today's session. We will start with short introductions of our three speakers, followed by individual presentations of approximately 20 to 30 minutes each. After these presentations, Carlos and I will facilitate a conversation among our guests, using a few guiding questions to explore connections, contrasts, and share the challenges related to faculty development in different institutional and cultural contexts. We will then open the discussions to the audience. Participants who are following the live stream are invited to submit questions through the forms we can find in the YouTube chat, and Carlos will bring selected questions into our conversation. We expect today's sessions to last approximately 2 hours. With that, let us begin with introducing our speakers. Our first speaker is Gina Mary Hurley, Associate Director for Teaching Development and Initiatives at the Yale POORVI Center for Teaching and Learning. Her work focuses on supporting faculty, postdoctoral scholars, and graduate students in developing strong teaching practices, especially in the humanities. She brings particular expertise in object-based teaching, teaching with collections, medieval studies, manuscripts, archives, and digital pedagogy. At Yale, she also helps lead programs that build communities of practice among instructors, including the McDonald Graduate Teaching Fellows Program. Our second speaker is Shigeru Miagawa, Professor Emeritus of Linguistics and Koshi Manjiro, Professor of Japanese Language and Culture at MIT. He is also a visiting professor at the University of São Paulo and executive advisor and visiting professor at the Research Center for Society at Seikei University in Tokyo. His work connects linguistics, Japanese language and culture, animal communication, and the evolution of human language. At USP, he leads a FAPESP-supported project through the São Paulo Excellence Chair Program, known as SPEC, investigating innovations in human and non-human animal communities. Our last speaker is Manoel Rodrigues Alves, professor at the IAU Institute of Architecture and Urbanism of the University of São Paulo. Trained in architecture and urbanism in Brazil, with a master's degree from MIT and a doctorate from USP, his work examines public space, the contemporary city, urban space production, and the urban specialties. He coordinates EACH, the Laboratory for Studies of Contemporary Urban Environment, and his research connects urban design, architectural theory, heritage, pedagogy, and the social experience of cities. He is board member at the USP Center for Faculty Development. Now we are ready to start. Professor Hurley, thank you for being with us today. We are very pleased to have your perspectives as part of this conversation. Please go ahead.
I'm delighted to be here. I just wanted to say what an honor it is to participate on this panel, which I really look forward to the conversation here today. So rather than share the nuts and bolts of any one program at the POORVI Center for Teaching and Learning, I want to give you an overview of some of the values and principles that guide our work with faculty, graduate students, and postdocs as we work on teaching development. So I hope that those are ones that are transferable to you and your colleagues. And I'm going to give you a couple of different examples that are animated by what I think are three central themes. The first of these is making teaching public. The second is practicing values-led, research-informed pedagogy. And the final one is elevating student voice, both at the graduate and undergraduate level, and developing future faculty. So looking ahead in addition to improving our university as it is today. So the first thing that I really wanted to talk about here today is what it looks like to make teaching public. So much of academic life is transacted in community. When we think about the conference Q&A, the peer review process, these at their best are meant to sort of leverage shared expertise towards the growth and advancement of our fields. Ironically, our teaching, which definitionally puts us in conversation with our students, can create what Lee Shulman famously described as pedagogical solitude. In other words, we shut the doors to our classrooms and leave our colleagues on the other side, teaching in relative isolation. Our work at the POORVI Center with faculty members aims to remediate that solitude, convening communities of practice that most often coalesce around great examples of teaching by our faculty, by our graduate students, by our postdoctoral scholars. So I don't think I have to say this to anyone in this particular room, but at a research-intensive institution, teaching is often rendered even more invisible, with evaluative measures marginalizing at best mentioned, ignoring it altogether at most. And we aim to bring that teaching into public. This is something that's built into the very architecture of our center. So we are inside of Sterling Memorial Library, which is a building that is doing its very best imitation of a medieval cathedral, though it was in fact built in the 1920s. But as one passes into the POORVI Center, you immediately encounter glass-walled classrooms and meeting spaces. This was an intentional design choice because we hope to showcase the great teaching that is happening every single day at our institution, rather than simply having that closed door that I alluded to earlier. You'd be surprised, however, how many colleagues I've had to sort of wave off as they overenthusiastically greeted me, not realizing that I was indeed standing in front of a group of 60 people rather than just sort of standing around inside of a glass building. So there are many examples of what celebrating teaching publicly looks like. Here, I'm going to offer just a few. So the first is to say that we have a series called the Teaching and Learning Discussion, which tends to put a couple of faculty members in conversation from different disciplinary perspectives around a shared concern. So as you might imagine, some of these have been about AI, some of them have been about student engagement or office hours or working with graduate TFs for the first time, teaching fellows or teaching assistants. One sort of more public example of this is our annual Spring Teaching Forum. This is a program that uniquely is open to people teaching at every single level. So it's faculty members, graduate students, and postdocs coming together to discuss something that is of particular interest to our community. So this year, we were talking about reclaiming joy in our teaching. It will probably be no news to any of you that the higher education landscape in the US is, in a word, fraught these days. And so thinking a little bit about what it means to find joy for our students, for ourselves, has become increasingly important. So we brought together an external speaker, Joy Gaston Gales from North Carolina State University, with Yale faculty and staff. And I just wanted to highlight some of the diversity of examples that folks brought to the table. So we had Matthew Crosman, who is a research associate at the Yale Divinity School and also directs the Life Worth Living program. This is a cross-institutional effort, which is supported by the POORVI Center to bring students into conversation about the global traditions of philosophy, of religion, of theology that might help them surface what it would look like to live the life that they hope to lead, regardless of the external circumstances that might limit those attempts. We also had Carla Neugebauer. She is teaching a course on climate change and climate optimism. She is a biologist by training, a biochemist, and she was noticing that her own daughter, when she was going to college, was saying that she absolutely had to study something that would help address the climate crisis, whether that was law, environmental studies, or something of the sort. And one of the things that she wanted to suggest here is that every single one of our disciplines has a role to play in addressing climate change. And so she designed a course that did just that, helping students see how a field that isn't often associated with solutions to these sort of global problems can indeed sort of turn the tide, to make the point to them that this is a job that is big enough that all of us must indeed participate in it. And finally, we had Jenny Frederick talking about starting the POORVI Center, which we just celebrated our 10th anniversary last year, in a climate of deep economic uncertainty around the economic downturn of 2007, 2008. So in hearing all of these examples and starting a conversation with our participants afterwards, a couple of common themes arose, despite the fact that we had folks joining us from all across the universities, from sort of traditional academic departments to professional schools. So that is that joy feels serendipitous, but it most often is the result of really careful structural planning to bring students into community around shared ideas and shared concerns. they describe the joy of watching students discover new things and the joy of thinking together and pushing toward the sort of limits of our fields together. So that is an example of how thinking through the examples of other folks teaching has really helped our faculty members and graduate students find inspiration in times where inspiration is really, really hard to come by. We've also been experimenting with the teaching demonstration as an opportunity to spark pedagogical conversation. So in this case, we invited a faculty member from a different institution, that's Cynthia Turner Camp, a medievalist and a director of graduate students at the Graduate Studies in English at the University of Georgia, whose work really resonated with current teaching at Yale. She teaches a course on technologies of the book that uses visualization technologies and microscopic techniques to really think about the composition of medieval materials. So when we got everyone together, she offered us a teaching demo surrounding a medieval psalter. And this is an absolutely huge book. It weighs about 50 pounds. So it is ideal for people to gather around and has enough space. But it is also something that was largely unfamiliar to most people in the room. This was not a room full of medieval musicologists. What we sort of noticed about this is that it ended up modeling the interdisciplinary collaboration that she was pitching in a class that brought together humanists and scientists around a shared concern, which is to say that as people asked questions that went further away from Cynthia's own expertise, she started deferring to the people in the room. So we had scientists who could talk about different kinds of sampling techniques. We had someone who works in conservation who was able to speak to the stitching of the manuscript and what that might mean. And in my absolute favorite moment, pictured here, we had a musicologist actually sing the liturgical hymn for us live in the room. And so the idea was that we can't enter our colleagues' classrooms on an everyday basis, but that we can take on the role of students and sort of embody that spirit of discovery in a way that opens us up to each other's expertise a little bit more freely than average. So in other words, by experiencing a colleague's pedagogy in live time, my colleagues were set up for a rich conversation about teaching practices more generally. But this isn't the only option that we give people who want to return to their grand old undergraduate days. So one of our favorite traditions is called Faculty Bulldog Days. This is a whole week where faculty members across the university open up their classrooms to their colleagues. This comes from something that we do for our prospective students, right? Graduating high school, coming to college, they have the opportunity to sit in on classes. And a number of faculty members were expressing a little bit of jealousy, right? Why didn't they have the opportunity to go see what their colleagues in different fields were up to? So this has become something that we've done for many, many years. We've had in 2026, 132 faculty and staff participants with 81 open classrooms to choose from. And every one of them had a visitor or up to 8, I believe. So the sample courses themselves included things like artificial intelligence, ethics and societies, orbital mechanics and mission design, to writing humor and structures of feeling, right? So it is truly interdisciplinary. I myself am a literary scholar and a book historian, and I've attended numerous classes over the years. There was one on scandal in French literature that helped me figure out my dissertation as I was finishing it up many years ago. But I've also attended classes on global ideas of corporations and the corporate city in modernity, or on modern American theater. So these opportunities taking place over the course of several days spark conversation about teaching. So often our universities are siloed, right? You may not have the opportunity to speak with your colleagues from different disciplines, but here is an explicit invitation to enter into their pedagogical spaces and really step into the frameworks that they are using with their students. What I have also found is that it opens people up to different kinds of experimentation. The more often people open our classrooms, the more often they are likely to try out something because they know a colleague will be there to tell them if it worked. They also get to see across disciplines what are the sort of assumptions about what teaching looks like and how might they shake things up in their own classroom. So the final example of making teaching public is our wonderful faculty teaching fellows program. So we tend to have 1 to 2 faculty teaching fellows per year, all of whom are pursuing different kinds of projects. So Daniel Hosang, who is a sociologist working in American Studies, among other departments, worked on unpacking Yale's long history of involvement in eugenics and actually went around to several different departments to help them think about their own history and their own intertwinement with those sort of troubling pasts. So this became something that has lasted across the years. So our own ecology and evolutionary biology department, where those matters are especially relevant and pressing and impact teaching on a daily basis, there is now a series of workshops to this day that thinks through how equity or matters of equity are impacting ecological education, but then also the shape of the discipline itself. Charles Balin, who is a senior faculty member in astronomy, saw that there were a number of students after the COVID pandemic who were looking for accommodations to the degree that he couldn't, in his larger lecture courses, actually keep up with every single request. And so his project came out of a felt need for himself that he also noticed was held by several of his colleagues. So he was able to develop over the course of his time with us a number of resources that drew from discussions about how best to accommodate student needs around disability, whether that has to do with mental health or whether it has to do with the variety of physical disabilities that students might encounter. In the upcoming year, we'll be doing something a little bit different. Tisa Winger, who is a professor of religious studies, cross-listed in the Divinity School, will be working with us on difficult conversations and talking across differences. So, this is something that comes in part from her experience as someone who is teaching at the Divinity School. This is a space where students are coming to the course material with very different kinds of investment. They might have a deeply held personal faith. They might also have an academic interest, and they might have both of those things. So her experience is really in thinking about how to convene those conversations in ways that invite students in and give them the opportunity to examine their own assumptions. At the same time, her work is on the relationship between religion and politics and how that intersection was productive of American identity. This topic is sufficiently wide-ranging that it required her to work across disciplines. So, when we open up a little bit about how different approaches to a field like religious studies can open up pedagogical perspectives, we have a wider array of faculty fellows whose work might be relevant to their colleagues. Our goal here is really to identify leaders who elevate conversations about teaching at Yale. While each of them brings a distinctive lens to their work from us, they all share curiosity about their colleagues' work and a desire to share their own. So all of these are examples of how, at a research-intensive institution, we strive to make teaching more public, whether that means asking faculty members to share their experiences, step into a student's shoes for a day, or even become a fellow for a more expanded period of time. The communities that arise from these various exploits have been ones that have been sustained over the 10 years of the center's founding. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the fact that in addition to teaching in public, we also want to teach in community. And that work is best accomplished, we've found, by giving faculty members the agency to shape their own teaching decisions around their values, foregrounding what they think their discipline has to offer students in their professional, personal and academic lives. That sense of faculty agency is centrally important. It is the foundation of academic freedom in the American academy and more broadly. But it is one that shapes both our programming and our approach to the one-on-one consultation. So rather than conceiving of these spaces as faculty members coming to us for help, we really try to think of them as a collaborative setting where we help them surface the values and the goals that really animate their teaching and help them achieve those goals. So, in part, this is because we find that when you tell people what to do, they won't listen to you anyways. But also, what we're striving to do is give faculty members a sense of ownership among their teaching that makes them more curious about the differences and the similarities that they see in each other's. And here, what always comes to mind for me is Parker Palmer's description of what happens when we speak about who we are as teachers, that identity and integrity might grow within us and among us, leaving us more united rather than in fixed pedagogical positions ready to sort of fight to the death, which is certainly not the model of a Center for Teaching that we're after, and I assume not the one that you're after either. So one of the examples I wanted to offer about what this looks like is the kind of elephant in any university room these days, which is to say AI. So artificial intelligence is something that really forces faculty members to examine their assumptions about the nature of information, about the nature of student learning, and what it is that they hope that their students are coming out of a university education with. Yale does not have a single AI policy that we enforce across classrooms. And I may be wrong about this, the future will tell. I don't think we ever will. And that is because instead we have guidance to offer faculty members the opportunity to make their own decisions about what they feel is important and what they want students to know about AI. We promote that they are clear about these decisions to their students, and we don't encourage any single approach. So I wanted to share our AI course revision grants as an example of what this looks like, because in addition to funding projects that think about AI as a learning tool, so simulations, for example, in medical school, or the opportunity to speak in a language that you're learning with an AI-generated person. In addition to thinking about AI literacy and what that means, and AI ethics and what that might mean, we also are giving grants to faculty members who want to redesign their courses to make them more resilient to AI, to experiment with different kinds of assignment or assessment protocol that disincentivize student use of AI. So the hope here is that faculty members feel that they can make their own decision and that they're decisions that they are truly comfortable with, rather than feeling pushed toward any particular conclusion, especially in a conversation that is rapidly evolving, to say the least. This same kind of energy really motivates a new grant program that we have just kicked off this year. These are called the Reflective Teaching Grants, and we are doing a pilot program this year that includes 5 grants across 5 departments. Essentially, what we ask the participants to do is identify a teaching innovation and then reflect upon its efficacy by gathering evidence collaboratively. So these are, for the most part, faculty members working with a graduate student to examine in depth the impact of a new teaching practice. Maybe it's new that semester, maybe it's something they've been trying out for a little bit, to really think through whether or not it is having the impact that they hope that it will. So what is special about these grants is that they are encouraging reflection and teaching as an iterative process rather than a thing that you do once and then do that way 6 million times until the end of your career. But we're also teaching the graduate students involved basic assessment techniques that we hope will help them as they think about different ways to gather evidence of effective teaching, both their own as they come up for such wonders as the job market or tenure or review, but also as they think about how to build sustainable departments and indeed institutions in the future. So The reflective teaching grants and the AI grants are both designed to make faculty members open to experimentation in the classroom. At a research institution, you are often more likely to be penalized for risky teaching than you are to be rewarded for good teaching. So these grants really encourage faculty members to try things out and to model reflective process, not just for the people that they're working with on the project, but also for students in their classroom. This incentivizes the very innovation that is often pushed to the side by promotion and tenure processes, while also adding support from the POORVI Center. So in each of these programs, we're not advocating a single practice or set of practices. Rather, we are allowing faculty members the agency to identify what they think is important, rather than enforcing what we think is most important. So surfacing values ensures that faculty members have a core set of principles through which they can make teaching decisions that they feel proud of, even in difficult times. We've found that embedded reflection helps instructors rejoice in the resonances between their teaching practices and those of their colleagues, rather than feeling threatened by the differences. And this opens up the opportunity to really discuss teaching in terms of institutional values and shared goals, rather than disciplinary values there. And here I often think about this quote from Kevin Gannon's recent book, The Pedagogy of Hope, which is that our pedagogy is a declaration of what we think matters. It is a living description of how we think good teaching and learning should occur, and of the moral imperative to create the type of inclusive and equitable learning spaces in which our students become critically conscious and actively engaged in their own education. Importantly, I think Gannon points out that these are decisions you have to make every single time you teach. And being able to watch faculty members do that on a regular basis can be truly inspiring to students. And it's there that I want to end, which is in thinking a little bit about what it looks like to elevate student voice at the POORVI Center. First, I'm going to sort of counteract my humanities training and throw some numbers at you. And the purpose of these numbers is to help you think about proportion. So the POORVI Center has 60 full-time staff members. That's because we bring together not just teaching support, but also learning support, tutoring, educational technology, and our sort of online courses and education programs. But in addition to that 60 full-time staff members, we have 469 student workers. These are graduate students and undergraduates doing a range of work, from tutoring to leading workshops to working very closely with faculty members on their teaching. And this is not an accident, right? Despite the fact that our classrooms are filled to the brim with our students, it can be very, very difficult to get their sort of unfiltered reactions to what it is that we're doing. And to this sort of challenge, we have a couple of ways of thinking through how to elevate student voice. So the first of these is a program called Pedagogical Partners. So this is a program in which an undergraduate is going to visit every single day a faculty member's course for the duration of a semester. They speak with the faculty member on a weekly basis about their teaching goals. They can also, if the faculty member wishes, survey and interview their undergraduate colleagues about their experiences. But importantly, they're not receiving credit for being in the course. They're not taking it as students. They're observing it to understand a little bit more from the student perspective how various pedagogical choices are playing out in the classroom. What we have found from the instructor side is that this is an opportunity to really make explicit a lot of the things that we tend to hold back about our own pedagogy, right? Making it explicit to a pedagogical partner also encourages them to speak to their students about it, right? And it has also had positive impacts on evaluations because it is showing students that that you care enough about your teaching to commit to having someone observe it for an entire semester, which is a very high bar indeed. And it's also really helped give voice to marginalized students within our classrooms. Especially this final quote is about thinking through at graduate level courses that may not have the same kinds of pedagogical attention paid to them, with the assumption that graduate students already know everything that they need to know about operating in those spaces. We find that this is far from true. Now, you might imagine, of course, that this improves faculty teaching. What might be more surprising is how positive an experience it is for students. I think very often students imagine that faculty members burst forth from the womb fully formed and teaching and knowing everything that they teach and know at this moment, rather than being works in progress. Instead, students who participate in this program find out that teaching really is an iterative process, and to really think through how professors approach the various choices around learning, around structure, around assessment that they make on an everyday and semester-long basis. I think too, it opens up communication that goes beyond the pedagogical partner and the involved professor, because it really is the suggestion that faculty members are open to feedback about their teaching, especially from students who might traditionally struggle in our own classrooms here at Yale. So it really strives to give students a voice in learning, and we hope that that voice sort of extends beyond the students who participate. So in addition to thinking through faculty development and undergraduate partners in that project, I want to close by saying a little bit about future faculty and mention our McDougall Graduate Teaching Fellows program, which I've had the great honor of leading for the last several years. We have 20 to 25 fellows annually drawn from an interdisciplinary group. Each fellow designs and co-facilitates 10 workshops per year, and they go on to a wide range of positions. So you might imagine that there are some folks who end up at centers for teaching and learning. This is true. I am one of them. I started out as a McDougall Graduate Teaching Fellow, but we also have folks who go on to traditional roles in the academy. So these are two testimonials from now faculty members, respectively at Bard College and the University of Rhode Island, who are really reflecting upon the kinds of communities of people who care deeply about teaching and how that helps them in the process of reflection. And also that this is a community where people can feel like they belong. We've talked a little bit about how research-intensive institutions tend to marginalize pedagogy. This really acts as a corrective to that. So these are the very students who lead our Certificate of College Teaching preparation, which is really aimed toward future faculty who are teaching at Yale as teaching assistants, but are looking forward to a wide array of careers inside and outside of the academy. And our program is all the more nimble because it is led by graduate students themselves. So I hope that this has been a useful examination of the various ways that we encourage teachers and faculty members to grow and to make that development successful and sustainable. Last year, we celebrated our 10th anniversary, and it was encouraging to think about what had changed. We feel that we're more than ever in a position to be proactive about an ever-shifting landscape in higher education. I think that comes from being deeply connected to our constituent communities, faculty members, graduate students, and postdocs, as well as undergraduates. Where universities tend to be siloed, where pedagogy so often takes place in solitude, we bring these communities together, and it is a delight to do just that. Thank you so much for letting me share these thoughts.
Thank you very much, Professor Hurley, for your presentation. We now move to our second speaker, Shigeru Miagawa from MIT and Seikei University. Professor Miagawa, thank you for joining us even more so early and on a Saturday. We look forward to hearing your perspectives and experiences. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. It's very nice to be here. Thank you, Gina, for that wonderful presentation. I didn't know about the Teaching and Learning Center at Yale. Very impressive, very impressive. In fact, I'm going to pick up on one of your major points, and that is making teaching public. And I'd like to pick up on that. You got us started on it on a wonderful way. I'll try to expand on it in my own presentation. So let me see if I can share my screen. So as I said, I'm going to pick up on Gina's point about making teaching public by talking about a project that I was part of and is now very much part of MIT called OpenCourseWare. 21 years ago, 26 years ago, time goes by very fast. 26 years ago, then president of MIT, President Charles Vest, brought together a small number of faculty from MIT, and I happened to be one of them, and told us to come up with MIT strategy for e-learning. The assumption was that we would propose to President Vest on MIT.com. That is, we would take teaching materials that faculty produce and package it and sell it to the world and make money. Right? That was the idea initially going into this project. And in order to make it possible to commercialize teaching materials, we were joined, there were about 5 of us, we were joined by a consulting firm, Booz Allen Hamilton, a big-time e-learning consulting firm that does huge e-learning commercial projects all over the world. They joined us to help us to come up with a very good business model for MIT.com. We spent 6 months studying, conceptualizing, coming up with business models. We came up with about 20 business models. We interviewed 60 or more organizations that were already doing for-profit e-learning, something that we wanted to do. And the promise to President Vest was that at the end of the 6 months, we would propose in a written form a report that will lay out what MIT.com should be. Well, after looking at many business models, looking at many companies, we realized that this is an extremely difficult business to be in, and that, in fact, nobody was making money. And so the question came up, does MIT want to engage in business at the time that did not seem all that exciting to us? As MIT, we wanted to make a statement, okay, that would somehow change the way things are done in the e-learning space. And so after going through all of that, we decided to flip it on its head and said, let's not propose MIT.com. Okay, let's say that we're going to make MIT curriculum completely open to the world, that anyone can access the teaching materials that our faculty members produce and download it, copy it, incorporate it into their own teaching materials, and use it in their own classrooms. Okay. We called it OpenCourseWare, and proposed it to President Vest, and very fortunately he liked it. Well, the rest is history. Let me see. So this is MIT OpenCourseware of today. I just got this screenshot just before we started. There are about 2,500 courses on MIT OpenCourseware today. You can access it. You don't have to register for it. You just go to ocw.mit.edu. All 5 schools, engineering, science, humanities and arts, urban planning, Sloan School of Business, all 5 schools have contributed their courses to OpenCourseware. You can see examples of this. You have robotics, you have humanities, this is comedy, social and ethical responsibilities of computing, land, water, food, and climate, that's urban studies. Okay. Just some examples of about 2,500 courses, that we offer. Okay. This is a study in academic leadership, faculty governance, and staying true to the values of your institution. Okay. Academic leadership, okay. President Vest and the senior leadership took this idea of making everything free, open, and really exerted leadership to make this possible. Faculty governance, we propose as faculty the idea, and we, the faculty, organized this idea with the senior faculty. And we run OpenCourseware. In fact, I was Senior Associate Dean for Open Learning for a number of years because of my involvement with OpenCourseware. We didn't know when we proposed this whether, it would get any kind of traction. Maybe the faculty would simply ignore the idea. The report would just sit on a shelf and collect dust. But very fortunately, it really was accepted by the faculty. And quite amazingly, something like 70% of MIT faculty have contributed their course material to OpenCourseware. And today, as I said, something like 2,500 courses are there. It is, I think, the single largest sort of open teaching materials by any university. You can go and look, ocw.mit.edu. I'm sure that you'll find a course. Some very popular courses include computer science, programming, linear algebra, introduction to biology, and bioscience, many courses, okay, along with humanities courses. As I said, so this is picking up on Gina's point, making teaching public in a very, very big institution-wide way. Okay. And that was 26 years ago. And today, we celebrate 25 years, 25 years, and over 500 million learners and educators have used MIT OpenCourseware. Okay. These are not hits. These are individual learners, 500 million learners who have used MIT OpenCourseWare. And they're from all over the world. You can see 32% from the United States, 17% from Europe and Russia, 15% from East Asia, including China, 20% from South Asia, primarily India and Pakistan. We have smaller numbers from Africa and South America. In Africa, there's a split. You have 7% from Northern Africa, 3% from Southern Africa. And the reason for this is that in Northern Africa, you have much better internet connection than Southern Africa. In fact, this has been a challenge that we have faced. When we first proposed OpenCourseWare, we wanted our teaching materials to be available to developing countries to help people who are not able to access high quality university level teaching and use our OpenCourseWare material to study. But we ran into this problem with internet connection. And so for that, what we did is what we call mirror sites. We would download OpenCourseWare content onto hard drives and take the hard drives to those countries, for example, in Africa or Haiti or some Southeast Asian countries, plug them into the intranet at universities. Most universities have very good intranet, okay, and do workshops and have those universities use OpenCourseWare material. I went to Africa some years ago, Kenya, Zambia, Cameroon, to help with the mirror site. This is an example of a mirror site in Haiti. Okay? One of our faculty members from Haiti translated many MIT OpenCourseWare into the local language. And their math courses, their engineering courses, and this is being used in Haiti using the mirror site. Yeah. And so that is one of the ways in which we have addressed poor internet connection. But for the rest of the world, people have broadband, and as I said, 500 million users, separate users, have used MIT OpenCourseWare. We have on a regular basis about 3 to 5 million users every month, month after month after month, using MIT OpenCourseWare. Okay. In terms of the kinds of users who use OpenCourseWare, 32% are independent learners. Okay. They just want to learn something about Python programming or Shakespeare or linear algebra or biology. 30% are students who are registered with an institution, degree-seeking student at some other organization. 20% are students who come directly, not through their teachers, but directly to OpenCourseWare. So total 53% are students at other institutions. 12% are professionals who are trying to brush up on their skills, and a mere 3% who are educators. Initially, we thought that educators would be the largest user of OpenCourseWare, but we were just wrong. It's mostly independent learners, professionals, and students who use OpenCourseWare. Okay. In order to make OpenCoursera possible, we had to have a large contingency of MIT faculty on a voluntary basis to contribute their teaching materials. Again, we were not sure if MIT faculty would participate, but I was very, very happy to see that close to 70% of MIT faculty. We have about 1,000 faculty, so that's about 700 faculty members who have contributed their teaching materials. And why have they chosen to do that? And here, I think a very relevant point has to do with values, something that Gina talked about. Okay, what we think is that OpenCourseware really tapped into the MIT core value, not OCW, MIT core value. So this is the MIT mission on the website. The Institute is committed to generating, disseminating, and preserving knowledge, and to work with others to bring this knowledge to bear on the world's great challenges. Okay? So it's in the MIT mission to open up knowledge, generate, disseminate, and preserve knowledge. And OpenCourseware simply tapped into this MIT's core value, and we think that's the reason why OpenCourseware has been so successful. A young faculty member came up to me just after we announced MIT OpenCourseware, and he said, the day MIT announced OCW was the proudest day of my career at MIT. Okay? So if it's not just the proposal to open up courses, but we happen to tap into the MIT core value of openness. They came together, and it really excited the faculty. And now we have, as I said, a large number of faculty members who are participating. And if you look at OpenCourseware, you'll see that it's really rich material. Okay, you have not only the syllabus, that's just the beginning. You have lecture notes, very, very detailed lecture notes. In fact, our lecture notes are used by students and faculty all over the world. Our own students, our own undergraduate students, 90% of MIT undergraduate students use OpenCourseware. Okay? We started this 25 years ago. 25 years ago, the internet was mostly, static websites, but things have changed since then. We have more videos, and now we have added more videos to the courses, and you can see them. I think we have them on the YouTube. Yes, we have a MIT YouTube channel with many, many video courses now. These are the YouTube courses, and as you can see, you have engineering courses, generative AI, deep learning, public finance. I believe this is a Sloan School business, principles of microeconomics, introduction to R, which is a very powerful programming language, the human brain. This is from cognitive science, and biology, introduction to biology. Again, many, many courses across the institute. The YouTube site has now more than 5 million subscribers. Just this year, 44 million users have used the YouTube, OCW YouTube. We've added 277 new YouTube courses just when you say this year, I think this was 2025. Lifetime YouTube views on OCW, 520 million users. These are not hits, these are users. Okay. And so when we first proposed OpenCourseware, we had no idea whether it would be accepted by faculty, but very fortunately, and I think because we tapped into the MIT core value of openness, we have been able to open up MIT to the world. And in many ways, we have sort of redefined what a university's mission is. So, university's mission used to be teaching our own students and carrying out research. Okay? But now it's not just our own students, but what we produce for our students, we produce and make it accessible to the entire world so that our institutions have become truly public institutions. We're here to educate the world. And OpenCourseware is one way in which we have done so. Okay. So let me stop there and turn it back to Paulo.
Thank you, Professor Miagawa, for this insightful presentation. And now we move to our next presenter. Our final speaker today is Professor Manoel Alves, representing the Center for Teaching Development at the University of São Paulo. Professor Alves, it's a pleasure to have you with us. We look forward to your contribution to today's discussion. The floor is yours.
Okay, great. Well, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation, and I hope I will be able to contribute to the discussion, because after these two wonderful small lectures, will help us really a lot in our enterprise, the ones that we are in. What I do, I will present what we have been working in the last 3.5 years about that. That's based on a faculty professional development policy. A group of colleagues, Paulo and Carlos are some of them. We work together in this working group and develop first a policy for a faculty professional development, and later and afterwards a center for. And this is very briefly the overview of my presentation, and I really try to be not take too much time. Because I'm more interested in the discussion, the debate, and learning with Gina and Shigeru. Basically, just for you guys to understand the historical overview. This working group for faculty for developing and elaborating a policy of faculty professional development was established early 2023. About March of 2023. There were other working groups in the university, for instance, working with pedagogy and developing some classes and instruments for training graduate students, most PhD, those who intend to become teachers. But this one was established by both the Office of the Vice Rector of Undergraduate Studies and as well as from the Graduate Studies. And it had two objectives: to structure the proposal for a faculty professional development policy, and after developing this policy, that where this policy was submitted to both the major councils in the university. Afterwards, a proposal for a faculty development center. And here you have the dates. You see, we are very, very young. We are babies. There's no way to compare with the wonderful work that you guys have been developing at Yale and MIT. On July last year, 2025, the Faculty for Development Center was established, and I want to stress that in Portuguese, it's Espaço de Desenvolvimento Docente, and for us, the use of the word space was quite important, and I will come back to it a little bit later. And then in September, a steering committee, the Faculty Professional Development Program, the committee that is in charge of the EDD, was nominated, was appointed. This committee is composed by 9 professors of the university. But why discuss? Wait just a minute, because this is not appropriate. Let me see this better. Why discuss the faculty development? We need it, independent of USP's the understanding that our excellence or not depends on an excellence in teaching. These are some of the parameters, some of the criteria that was were and still remain important to be considered when we talk about iSpace, the Center for Teacher Formation or faculty development more than anything. It's not only a matter of scientific and technological transformations that are extremely important nowadays, and we know that all the transformation that is due to the changes in the 21st century, basically, and Gina and Shigeru have already brought it, but also, at least in USP case, the diversification of student profiles, but I would say also of the faculty, internationalization, the hybrid education, and so on. Because, and why an institutional faculty development policy? Why was it so important to USP? What we heard and the task that was attributed to us, hey guys, we need to respond to ongoing transformations. We need to be able to empower our faculty in a development that takes into consideration innovation and professional growth. The two of them are strategic dimensions. Nothing new, of course, I believe everybody agrees, but something is important, or basically important, to understand the differences between USP, Yale, and MIT. USP is the most important and the most productive university in Brazil, and I would say in Latin America. But that's the picture. It's also a mass university. We have almost 100,000 students, graduates and undergraduates. And we have 7,800 professors, senior professors included. And it's something that it's important to understand. So in this context, what are the principles, the foundation that we worked with? We considered, we understand, let's put it this way, it's better, we understand teaching as a complex activity that has at least these dimensions: epistemic, pedagogical, scientific, ethical, social, emotional, institutional, and relational. And also knowledge. It implicates, it encompasses, it comprehends different knowledges, not only the curricular or the scientific knowledge, but also the professional training and the experiential knowledge, what we learn along our lives, the experience that we have. And we also know, I believe, that I would like to hear a little bit about it, but I believe that both in Yale and MIT, maybe mostly in Yale, because it's a center for teaching and learning, or capacitating faculty, I believe that that was some resistance happened. Another foundation of our debate, of our elaboration of the policy, was the conviction that the faculty development has to be understood as a strategic priority. It's based on that we will be able or not to evaluate the quality of our education, the integration of teaching, research, and extension, classical triptych of the role of a university, but also to understand that the faculty development is a lifelong professional development. Not everybody understands it like that, but it's clear to us. And as such, we will have to deal with curricular innovation. So, the things in relation to these dimensions, the professional, the personal, and the institutional dimension, not only merely training a professor, but or training somebody to teach, but more than that, it's a process of formation and education. These three dimensions can be represented in this small diagram, in this brief diagram, this way. In personal terms, my motivation, the motivations and the trajectory of the person. And as Gina mentioned a couple of times, the importance of values and the identity of the teachers have to feel an identity with the institution they are working with and with the teaching that they are developing. About professional dimension, I think I already talked, and there is an institutional one. What are the values? What's the culture that USP intends to put forward? And as a consequence, what will be, what are the policies, the structures, and the recognition of those who were involved in with that. It was based on this, let's say, criteria and parameters that we elaborated and proposed to the rector a faculty professional development policy, what we say PDPD in Portuguese, Programa de Desenvolvimento Profissional Docente, that we have been in the last, not only after the publication and the constitution of the center, but even before a little bit, we have been developing some actions and putting it forward under a strategic vision, that is necessary. This policy, it has to be permanent. It has to be integrated. It has to be permanent, and it has to be institutional, and it has to be understood as such by my colleagues, by our colleagues at the university. Based on that, what does the PDPD propose? We propose to the rectory a permanent institutional policy. That's why it was submitted to the two major councils and approved there. As well as a faculty professional development program and a permanent faculty professional development center. I'm not sure that's the best translation to English, but in Portuguese, we call it Espaço de Desenvolvimento Docente. And we use the word space. Espaço is a space, because we didn't want to use office or center, but the word space for us has an important meaning in terms of how we understand it, what we want to build, because we are still in the process of building it. We are very much at a very early stage of building the space for faculty development, for curricular innovation, research, and monitoring. For us, the use of the word space and not office or workshop or whatever is extremely important. These are the principles that we believe in: the necessity to integration of teaching, research, and extension. As I mentioned before, the complexity of teaching, and the necessity or the long life, the permanent and continuing education. Institutionally speaking, this is basically the institutional architecture. The EDD is related to the rector, to the office of the rector. Operationally, it has a steering committee that's responsible for the management, and this committee, although it is associated, it's related, it's linked to the rector, it works very closely to the office of two vice-rectors, the undergraduate students and the graduate students. Furthermore, as I mentioned, we have the EDD, as a permanent space for that. And we are beginning to develop mapping first, and then developing some, because we want to, and we understand it as crucial, a strong relationship with the units, because the schools at the university, because many of them have already initiatives about faculty formation and faculty teaching. It's not a matter that, we have to develop everything. You started from nowhere, right? And then we have these objectives to enhance the faculty, pedagogically speaking, to foster curricular innovation and active teaching approaches, and to develop mechanisms for assessment and monitoring. Right? These objectives, they are being developed based on three, let's say, contents framework: the seminars, the modules, the courses, the activities that we develop are based in one of these three blocks. One of them, disciplinary and professional knowledge, educational and teaching knowledge, or teaching and learning processes. These are the three structural frameworks that we work with. And also, at least so far, something that is permanently being evaluated, we have these structuring themes, or these main thematics: university and social responsibility, didactics, curriculum, assessment and evaluation, diversity, equity, inclusion. It's extremely important for us, and also if we consider our cultural, economic, or social context, educational technologies, and mental health and well-being. An issue that has been concerning us very much in the last few years, and not only because of the COVID, the pandemic. Going to the finish. Here is, what we have been working, courses and modules, seminars on teaching practices or seminars on teaching and learning processes. The pedagogical week, something that we began last year, and we did it again this year. It's a week of a very large number of activities that we offer to professors for all the colleagues. It's open. Vivenciando, it's what we are here now. It didn't start with this proposal. Vivenciando, as Carlos mentioned in the beginning, it started in another committee related to the teaching also, but not exactly this one in 2020. And these activities are presential or online. And also, we began to establish relationships, knowledge sharing networks with other networks, with research or not research networks, basically, but not necessarily only research networks. And we are still, as I said, we are still small baby, beginning establishing and understanding better these networks. At the moment, mostly Brazilian, but not only, right? This is what we have. For instance, just for you to have an idea, in the next semester, we have this module. I'm very excited about it. It will be broadcasted, it will be online, it will have access, but it will be also presential a little bit with some guide in terms of a kind of a philosophical cafe, where you can discuss. There are 8 sessions about it. We have seminars on teaching practices and learning processes. In the last semester, the second semester of last year, we had 57 activities, and all the activities in the pedagogical week. The cycle, it went from August to November. Some of the activities were debate sessions, roundtables, seminars, workshops. There was a very large variety. But we invited the professors, we invited the colleagues to propose. They were the ones to propose under those 3 blocks, the 3 theoretical frameworks. But they had the autonomy to propose the theme, the thematic, and we just organized it the same way with the pedagogical week, right? This is just about Vivenciando, and then some of the the posters. What's important is I have this slide just to mention the next cycle of Vivenciando in the second semester of 2026 that is associated with this module. We want also to discuss digital open education and coloniality in the university. How can we overcome it? One characteristic of the Vivenciando cycles, and it's proposed as a question mark. It has a question mark and it's proposed as a question. Well, we are very young and so on, and with what we can say, and for sure it will not be all the challenges or the main challenge that we face now. I say that one is the interrogation among the provost offices, the rector and his director offices. It's also the organizational insertion of the EDD among other teaching spaces that already exist in the university, as well as the organizational support. I almost cried, Gina, when you said that you have 6 staff members and 469 student collaborators. What an envy. But anyway, and also, as I mentioned before, every time we talk about faculty formation, it's a lifelong process. I believe that everywhere, and USP is not different, you will find a resistance. So, as Gina mentioned, values are extremely important, but also the academic incentives. It has to have, it's necessary to have an institutional recognition. Those who understand it, those who compromise with this lifelong process, the university has to acknowledge, it's necessary that university acknowledges the effort of these colleagues and that it must be considered in terms of a career progression. Of course, and it's everywhere, we are facing a huge amount of issues to be addressed. The university transformation in 21st century. AI is one of them, as Gina already mentioned, and Shigeru mentioned others related to the empowerment necessary in empowering minds. And minds understand here, if we talk about the public engagement, the dimensions, one of the dimensions that the faculty development program must observe, it is related also to empowering minds in the communities. Shigeru mentioned it as well as Gina when she presented the teaching for the community. In these dimensions, one other thing is the unlocking of knowledge, to use the expression that Shigeru brought to us. That's it's a crucial point if we want effectively to deal with all these issues. And we must have in mind there is a tension between pedagogical innovation and institutional structure, or if you want, between pedagogical innovation and the way that it's received by at least a percentage of the professors of the university. In our case, in particular, we have also to deal with our singularities. If just for you to have an idea, but it's also, there is a similar problem. To have an idea, about 15, 16 years ago, USP used to have about 23 to 25% income undergrad students from public schools. Today, this percentage is over 50%. It's about 54, 55%. And this means it represents a very clear and strong change in the students. I will say that it's also a similar process is happening in relation to new faculty, new professors, and it's just a consequence. Let's put it this way. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Alves, for your presentation. And I thank you to all three speakers for sharing your perspectives with you today. We have heard three different yet highly complementary approaches to faculty development. Your presentations have highlighted a range of institutional contexts, professional experiences, and educational priorities, while also raising a number of common questions about how universities can support faculty, foster knowledge dissemination, and strengthen academic communities. At this point, I would like to move from individual presentations to a broader conversation among our guests. Drawing on the questions submitted by the audience, we identified 5 themes that resonate strongly with today's topic. I would like to use these themes to guide your discussion, and later we can incorporate any additional question that we receive until the end of the session. I will starting with the first theme, valuing teaching in research-intensive universities. I'd like to begin with these broader institutional questions about how teaching is valued in research-intensive universities. In many institutions, research remains more visible and more strongly rewarded than teaching. How can universities create reward and recognition systems that encourage faculty members to invest more deeply in teaching while maintaining excellence in research? This also relates to a question from Lilian Yamamoto from IACH-USP, who asks whether there has been any research on the effects of Yale University's Faculty Bulldog Days, particularly regarding teaching practice, faculty development, or student learning outcomes following participation in the program. Who wants to start?
Well, I'm happy to get us started there. No, we don't actually have anything published as of yet on the impact on Faculty Bulldog Days, but we should. That's an excellent idea because it is a program that has been sustained for many years. As far as valuing teaching and research intensive institutions goes, I think part of what we have found is that we aim to change cultures both at the individual and at the departmental level. And so what that means is cultivating allies in departments who then can influence their own conversations, going into departmental spaces as well as holding our own kind of external events. This is slow work. And I also think it is something that has kind of been hurried along by different kinds of tensions and crisis within the higher education landscape. So, for many of our faculty members who come to us, the COVID-19 pandemic was the moment where they really realized how badly they needed to get more support around their teaching. And the fact that we were there to help them think about that and help them build continuity meant that we became a trusted resource. But it also helped them, and I think, there are many theories of crisis that suggest this anyways. It helped them kind of understand what values were most important and also what cracks already existed within the status quo of teaching as a practice at the university, which is to say that students who are traditionally disadvantaged in our brick and mortar residential classrooms are the very same ones who are often disadvantaged during remote teaching and during the pandemic. Very similarly, I think AI has put a great deal of pressure on all of us as instructors to really define the distinctive value of disciplines themselves, as well as the uniquely human contribution that each of us makes to them. That means really thinking through the ways that assessments follow the true goals of our disciplines, rather than finding ourselves grading the things that we don't actually think matter all that much, like polish or sort of the surface rather than the actual substance of our students' work. Neither of these things are things that I particularly wish to happen in the world, and I imagine that many of you feel quite the same way. But what they do is show faculty members their teaching in a different light and sort of confront them again with the reality of what might be happening in their classroom versus that sort of ability to fall into complacency that I think all of us are prey to at any point in our career. But here I'll defer to my colleagues.
Okay, on the question of how teaching can be valued in a research-focused institution, that's a very, very important question. When you look at it historically, universities used to be just about teaching in the 18th century, for example. Harvard, the oldest institution in the US, Oxford even, it was for teaching. Okay? And it was in the 19th century, particularly with Humboldt University, where research became a focus of university. Okay? And that played into the historical events, Industrial Revolution, the World Wars that needed technology and basic research. Okay, and so research became the prestigious activity for universities, like Yale, like MIT, like USP. And we had to find a balance. When we realized that undergraduate students needed to be taught and taught well. Well, to get the faculty to focus on anything, you have to come up with a reward system. And in the case of US, that reward system was created in many different ways, but the most important one for institutions like MIT and Harvard, and I think Yale, is that the tenure system, okay, which rewards faculty for success in their career by providing tenure, that is lifelong employment. To get tenure at a place like Yale or Harvard or MIT, your research must be world-class, but your teaching has to be very good or excellent. You can be you can be a really good researcher, but if your teaching is poor, you're not going to get tenure. I mean, it is the case that just being a good teacher cannot get you tenure at a place like Yale or MIT. You have to have a world-class research portfolio. But when teaching became part of tenure evaluation 30, 40 years ago, you saw this very visible improvement in teaching. I think places like Yale and MIT can now proudly say that we actually do very good teaching, and we even have these teaching centers with experts who are helping faculty to improve their teaching.
I just want to address it's central what Shigeru just brought to us, and the difference that what a tenure what a tenure represent, right? All of us at USP that are involved with this effort of the conviction that teaching is a lifelong process. Have at least once heard from some colleague, "Oh, I don't like to give classes. I don't like to teach. I just want to do research." And in many units, what we still see is that, okay, these guys, they ask their doctoral or postdoctoral students to go there and be the real teacher. They will show up, I don't know, a few times during the semester. But the point here is that it has to be recognized, as Shigeru mentioned. And that's absolutely a necessity for us. We are in a university that values much more research results, productivism, not necessarily productivity, because the number of papers or whatever or publications, and we know how the this industry works. So it has to change. We have a possibility with a new program here at USP called GACE, GACE, that it's directed to teachers or faculty members that propose that will have the autonomy to present and propose what they call strategic projects. One of the categories that must be included in the universe of GASI is teaching, is research on teaching. That's, I think it's absolutely central. And I agree with you guys. We need it. We don't have it, unfortunately, but we need to build it. Not processes necessarily, but recognition mechanisms, the way that our colleagues will feel recognized, either because they will be presenting a course or doing some activity that will help their colleagues, or because you are one attending a module, a seminar, a course that will help you on teaching. Definitely.
Okay, thank you all for the insightful thoughts for this first question. And now I move on for a different subject. A second theme concerns doctoral education and the preparation of future faculty members. Doctoral students are often expected to prioritize research, yet many of them will eventually pursue academic careers that include substantial teaching responsibilities. How can universities better integrate pedagogical development into doctoral education without compromising research training? What approaches have proven most effective in preparing young scholars to become strong in both research and teaching? This connects to a question from Marco from Escola Politecnica USP, who is supervising a doctoral student researching centers for teaching and learning with a focus on developing teaching competencies for active learning methodologies in engineering education. He asks where scholars and practitioners can find relevant literature on centers for teaching and learning to support research and discussion in this area. Who can start to offering some elements to this question?
You start. I will be very brief. May I start? Sure, because I think the bibliography, our Shigeru and Gina may help Marco much more. But the first part of the question, just to mention that USP had this initiative until a year ago. There was a committee, a didactic and pedagogical formation committee under the vice rector of graduate students that developed along 4 to 5 years. I believe Carlos was also a member, and he may correct me if I'm mistaken. We developed seminars and courses and offered courses for graduate students, master and PhD students that are aiming to become a teacher, to become a faculty in a university in Brazil. This was an initiative that lasted, I believe, for 3.5 or 4 years, and it can be very easily re-implemented. What you need is the political will. You need the political decision to do that and the political will. That's something, even for the EDD, we need the political will of the rector to build it, to consolidate it. We are still babies.
Let me respond to that. It's a real problem, so going back to the tenure, we require research, we require teaching. We spend all of our time, as your questioner said, training our graduate students to do research. Okay? We don't train our graduate students to teach. We have them do TA, teaching assistant. Okay? But basically, it's an apprenticeship. If you happen to have TA'd for a very good teaching professor, you're lucky. You learn very good skills. If you're not, and there are many professors who are not skilled at teaching, then you don't learn to teach well. And so it is, I think we're failing, to be honest, that we expect faculty to do good teaching, but we don't provide any kind of training for doing that. And so our graduate students are simply continuing with good and bad habits of teaching. That it's almost like genetics. You get good genes, you get some pretty bad genes, and it just keeps going. Interestingly, where that broke down was during COVID. And I actually spent a lot of time interviewing faculty members. All of a sudden, they couldn't teach the way they used to teach because everything became online. No one's ever taught online. They had to come up with some new ways. And I actually saw faculty members do more innovation in teaching during COVID than I had ever seen before, because they had to set aside the teaching habits that they inherited from their professors.
So I so appreciate the reflections of my colleagues, and graduate education around pedagogy has been sort of a priority of the POORVI Center for a really long time. In fact, our graduate teaching center predates the POORVI Center as a whole. It started around 1999-2000, whereas the center itself is just 10 years old last year. So one of the things that enabled this shift is in part changing headwinds within higher education, which is to say that around 1993, more attention was starting to be paid toward the development of graduate students as future faculty. This idea that one might just be sent into a classroom in one's first year in the faculty and just sort of sink or swim, all of a sudden started seeming like a less good way of approaching things, at least as far as the landscape in the United States goes. So there are a couple of things that I have really found helpful in working with graduate students, even those who aren't pursuing our certificate program. So one of those is that for the Yale PhD student, teaching is built into the degree. So they must indeed teach in order to receive their PhD. But to your point, Shigeru, the success of that experience is so wildly various and dependent upon the situation in which you find yourself. Some students have some degree of autonomy. Some of them have a little bit more support. And then some of them are essentially grading and not seeing students. What we found is that there are market pressures now on good, successful teachers. As both of you have pointed out, good research is not enough to get tenure. Good research is also no longer enough to get a job. And so that sort of market pressure, while obviously it has terrible impacts upon the mental health of our students, it also means that there is more focus paid to that teaching. So for our teaching assistants and teaching fellows, we encourage faculty members to meet with them once a week as part of that assignment, right? In order to have a teaching fellow team, that's a commitment that one has to make as a faculty member. But there are departments that go further and have done so really successfully. Our English department, like many English departments, has an excellent teaching practicum taught by a rotating cast of faculty members who are excellent teachers. This is not completely unique to Yale, especially after the GI Bill in the US, which started sending a wider group of students to colleges after World War II. A lot of English departments saw the need for a much more dedicated support around writing, but also a dedicated support around mathematical training. So, I really see often that those departments are leading the way in terms of real preparation for graduate students. One of the last things that I'll say here is that we hope to show our graduate students that they can think of teaching as an intellectual and scholarly pursuit. I think that we are lucky enough, all of us, to work with people who have the capacity to reimagine their disciplines and to really think about a classroom as a space where students can participate in that reimagination, while also adopting some of the reflective and assessment practices that help people understand the impact that those are having on their students, I think is one way to sort of help them see that as something that is important. More and more graduate students, at least in the United States, are coming into faculty positions with some kind of teacher training. So, while I completely agree that we have a far distance to go, I think that there are positive trends that suggest that there is appetite for this kind of support for teaching fellows. And it's appetite not just amongst the graduate students, but it is also among faculty members who, in part, are mentoring their students as they navigate an uncertain job market.
Thank you, all of you, for more insightful and inspiring comments. And now I'd like to explore another topic. It is how faculty development initiatives can combine broad pedagogical principles with the specific challenges of different disciplines. What role do one-to-one mentoring and small group programs play in supporting teaching improvement? How important is it to connect pedagogical conversations to the particular contexts, cultures, and constraints of different academic fields? This theme also relates to a question from Lilian Yamamoto, who asks, which teaching methodologies are most commonly used in humanity courses at Yale University, and whether they incorporate active learning approaches. It also connects to Marco's question about active learning in engineering education, since both questions raise the broader issue of how pedagogical innovation may vary across disciplinary contexts.
I'm happy to answer the specific question about Yale, which is to say that, I think active learning is an increasingly important part of teaching. I think several of us have mentioned the impact of the pandemic on the way that we conduct our classrooms, which is that when you are on Zoom, it is all the more important to find active ways of noticing whether your students are indeed engaged at all, or perhaps on their computers or somewhere else. So I do think that there is a real emphasis around that. And, that is also true across disciplines in large lecture courses. What we're seeing in our engineering departments is more of an emphasis on practice and process. And I think this is really something that is particularly relevant to engineering education as students think about sort of exiting into industrial roles. But it is also a reflection too, I think, of the fact that AI puts a particular pressure on all of us to sort of show the human intellect that underlies a particular product, which is to say that students who understand a process are able to then sort of apply what they know to a broad range of situations, whereas students who are very sort of focused on that singular answer, are less likely to adapt to the sort of uncertainties of practical real world contexts. And then finally, I'll say that, consultations on a one-to-one basis, as well as small group opportunities, those are really moments. I would say that in all of our programming, we like to ask questions that are broad enough that they can be sort of activated by the faculty members within their own disciplinary context, which is to say that we ask people to do the imaginative work of supplying examples which are relevant to their teaching, of thinking about the particularities of their disciplines, but then also noticing the unexpected resonance that they might find with their colleagues. So, I think it's a combination of both, but it is especially important, I think, to notice and to respect the long disciplinary histories around pedagogy that exist in many of these departments, and not to discount them in favor of a sort of broader, more theoretical model of teaching that isn't responsive to those textures. I think both are equally important, and both offer faculty members an opportunity to sort of take agency and ownership in their own teaching.
Thank you for the questions, for the two questions, Paulo and Marco, and I don't remember the name of our colleague. Sorry. I would talk specifically about the moment that we are in this moment of starting and consolidating the EDD. One thing that we still have to finish is to map, the initiatives that are being developed that are already going on, are ongoing at USP. For instance, the initiative that Marco mentioned that he's developing at Poly, but also we have in different campi, for instance, in Ribeirão Preto, you have a very strong grupo de apoio pedagógico, GAP, that has a lot of work, that has been developing a lot of work, at least for 10 years. So there are initiatives going on at USP. And I really think that one of the first missions of EDD is to map at least these main initiatives, to begin a process of learning and understanding what's going on, and then to design and establish an interaction with units, institutions, schools, or centers, based on principles. And finally, to understand, I think that's also very, very, very important, that to understand that more and more we are moving to a transdisciplinary environment of teaching and learning. It's not only multidisciplinary, it's not interdisciplinary at least, but it's trans, and we have to learn. We need to learn. I don't believe that there is a model that's what has to be followed. It's essential that we listen to our colleagues. We listen to understand and what they believe. This is also mapping. You have to understand what our colleagues think. You have to respect the diversity that is embedded in universities like Yale, MIT, USP, Harvard, Stanford, Cornell, whatever, right? It's necessary to do so. We have to understand some people, many people still today understand that hybrid process of teaching and learning, PHDA in Portuguese, is it's similar to online education or to distant education, and they are not. They are just methodological procedures, and they are a procedure process and not a model of teaching. In fact, hybrid process have been implemented in the last 50 years, century ago. They are not new. but we still have to learn and to stimulate, and I believe a transdisciplinary environment of teaching and learning more and more, and that it is going to be the trend. That's the trend that it's established already.
Is there time for me to say something?
Sure.
Yes, and I take the moment to make a consultation for all of you. I have two more very interesting questions, and could I stay here for just a few minutes?
Okay.
Just to explore the questions I have here to acknowledge the public participation. May I stay here until 7:15? Yeah.
Yeah. Let me mention something that underscores the important job of the work that Gina and Manoel and others are doing in terms of active learning. Okay? There's a professor named Eric Mazur at Harvard. He's a very influential experimental optical physicist, and also a fabulous teacher. He was getting raves. He was getting fantastic student evaluations because he's such a charismatic lecturer. Professor Mazur one day decided, after his fantastic lecture, how much his students were retaining what he was teaching. And he discovered, to his shock, that they're hardly retaining anything. They're simply memorizing formulas. They're not really learning the principles of physics, despite the fact that he was getting fantastic student evaluation. He was famous for his charismatic lectures. Okay? What he realized was that he was simply lecturing one way, and that students were simply listening passively. So that day he stopped lecturing. He literally stopped lecturing and said, listen, you guys figure this out on your own. Okay? And he told his TAs to interact with the students. And all of a sudden, students are learning physics. Okay? So the lesson in this, and so they became active learners, the lesson in this is that good teaching is not the traditional charismatic giving lectures. Okay, the showmanship, it might be good for inspiring students. Okay, and Professor Mazur, but for real teaching and learning, you got to do what Manoel and Gina and others are doing. You got to have learning and teaching, and we are a long, long way from achieving that goal. And I'm so happy that Gina and Manoel and others are doing that.
Thank you for the contributions for this topic. And I have two more questions, and maybe you can consider to contribute to one of them or for both. I have time here, and I am taking advantage to listen to you, but I need to be careful about the time you have to stay with us. But I will move on to the next topic, and I think it's a very important one, the community of practices. The fourth theme concerns the creation of sustainable community of practice around teaching. Such communities are often seen as powerful ways to create a culture in which teaching is openly discussed, valued, and continuously improved. Yet building these communities is rarely straightforward. How can institutions encourage initial engagement among faculty members and create the conditions for meaningful interactions that eventually grow into sustainable communities of practice? This question also links back to the broader discussion of centers for teaching and learning, which often play a central role in convening faculty, fostering dialogue, and helping pedagogical conversations move beyond isolated initiatives. who can contribute to this discussion involving communities of practice?
I'm happy to offer a brief response to start us off. I think there are a couple of things that we found really useful. One is that offering a reward, even if a small one, for participation can be helpful. So at Yale, we have what's called the Faculty Teaching Academy, which means that faculty members who participate in a certain amount of programming over the first 3 years of their time with us receive a small bursary toward their research accounts. Now, there's also, I think, value in funding experiments, which is to say that we have a group of faculty members in English and in other departments who are currently working on an experiment to essentially go back to all paper materials in their classroom, while also addressing some of the accessibility concerns that come hand in hand with that choice. So they're getting together on a fairly regular basis to talk about this as an experiment. And we were in a position to offer, at least at the start, some amount of funding for the printing of those materials so that the burden of the finances wouldn't fall on the students. I also wanted to offer a sort of shout out to some colleagues at Singapore Nanyang Technological University, where their faculty learning communities, rather than being run through the Center for Teaching and Learning specifically, are actually given out as awards to particular faculty members and funding to convene groups of faculty members who are interested in a particular topic or idea. So I had the opportunity to work with faculty members in every different discipline, from graphic design to the School of Medicine, around what sort of a thing object-based teaching was. And the sort of output of that community was a handbook of practices around teaching with collections, teaching with objects, that to made public some of the practices they were finding most useful in their classroom. So there are a number of ways to do this, and I think part of it is offering structural support, whether that means material support, whether that means snacks, which are always an inducement to any number of things, or whether it's just the organizational support that is often so thin on the ground.
Very briefly, just to open up and not speaking about internally in terms of just university and community of practice in terms of university, but something that I think that's very important that we have in mind and consider is the social responsibility and the social commitment that we have with the society. In that regard, we have to accept that, for instance, we talk a lot about citizen science, or if you want to push it further, of post-normal science. There are principles there. There are the way how we teachers, or the way how we teach, how we relate, how we establish our relationship with communities, or even, let's say, with our students, that they are also a community. We may have, let's say, a different our level of contents. Supposedly, it should be different, but our intelligence level is the same. We have to understand it if we want to build this kind of environment, an environment of teaching and learning, where we recognize that different agents, and not only the professor as a lecturer.
Shigeru, do you want to make some comment? No? Okay. As we come to the end of today's sessions, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to our speakers, Professor Shigeru Miagawa, Dr. Gina Hurley, and Professor Manoel Alves. Thank you for sharing your experiences, reflections, and insights with us. Although your work emerges from different institutional and cultural contexts, today's conversations highlighted a common commitment to supporting faculty development as an essential dimension of academic life. I would also like to thank Assis for his technical support in the background of this debate and everyone who joined us, both here and through the live stream, as well as those who contributed with questions and comments throughout the discussion. This session concludes the first semester Vivenciando series dedicated to knowledge production and academic training, a contemporary utopia. Throughout these conversations, we have explored different aspects of how academic communities are formed, sustained, and transformed. Today's discussion reminds us that faculty development is not only about improving teaching practices, but also about strengthening the institutions and communities in which teaching, learning, and research take place. On behalf of the University of São Paulo, the Teaching Development Center, EDD, and the Vivenciando team, thank you all for being with us today. We wish you an excellent evening, and we hope to welcome you again in the future Vivenciando sections. Thank you very much.